Scott McDonald, who is Associate Professor and Director at Krause Innovation Studio at University Park, and Tim Simpson, who's Professor and Director of the Learning Factory at University Park. So thank you guys all for joining us. And this is actually kind of an extension of a conversation that we had started at the Media Commons tailgate event a few months ago. And I'm really happy that Scott is here to join us in person. In that particular conversation, Scott was represented as a giant head, which is really kind of disconcerting to be.
Inappropriate.
Yeah. So this works much better.
Dominated. That's right. Yeah.
I thought I'd get started by kind of setting the tone and sharing something that was published on the Onward State, which is, if you're not familiar, a student-run newspaper, very popular. And they did they're not associated with the university at all. They did a story called 5 Worst Classrooms on Campus. And it was, I think, very illuminating to a lot of us, including Dave. I'm sure saw some of those classrooms, and he's probably pretty aware that how bad these classrooms are. I thought I'd just take some of these pictures are hilarious, but it gives you kind of this is the low bar for what we're talking about today. This is kind of the worst. This room is described as a strangely trapezoidal room. There's no kind of reason for why it's trapezoidal, but it's sort of not really encouraging very much discussion there. This is, obviously, you guys have all probably seen the forum. This is one of our old giant classroom buildings. These seats are, I guess when they built this classroom maybe 50 years ago, the people were smaller, so they made very small chairs. You can see that guy sitting there kind of crouched in with all his technology. I believe this is, what is it, Sparks, Dave?
This is either 10 or 121 Sparks.
Yeah, so typical sort of bolted down seats and those annoying little swing arm things, and again, very, very kind of tight and sort of white, very sterile room. Another similar sort of thing, giant rows of chairs. And this is my favorite one. This is Pond?
This is 117 Osmond.
117 Osmond. Yeah, this, if you have a fear of heights or vertigo or anything like that, then this is a bad room to be in. This is about a 45-degree incline. It's rather scary to sit in some of these spaces. So that's sort of those are pretty bad classrooms, but I would say that they're actually pretty average classrooms for Penn State. And hopefully what these guys around me are going to talk about today are the other end of the spectrum, the best learning spaces on campus, and some strategies maybe for how we can all get to the future of learning spaces where we have classrooms that support a lot higher level of engagement and active learning. So I thought I'd just kind of start questions for you guys with just some general remarks about what is working and what isn't working. Clearly we can see some things that aren't working. What isn't working in our classrooms right now? Maybe we can just
Going down the line.
Yeah.
What is or isn't working? Tim Simpson, Engineering Learning Factory. I think we're finally getting to the point where everything's not bolted to the floor and crammed in, and we can move tables around and roll chairs around and be much more interactive in the classroom. One of the challenges for us in terms of it's not working yet, but it makes it difficult is within engineering, a lot of the hands-on activities that we're doing now, and more laboratory space and learning factory. We do a lot of design projects from freshmen through seniors, and finding space to do that, store stuff, workspace, desk space that also converts to lecture space, that converts to video conferencing space, et cetera. And so the flexible space, but at the same time, if it's too flexible, then people don't use it. So those are some of the challenges, especially given how much enrollments have been going up on the engineering side. We've been looking recently. Freshman admits have been up 50% in the past 3 years now, and they still all have to do hands-on projects, and they got to do this and they got to do that. A lot of lab courses and things get crunched. So we're having not quite an existential crisis yet, but very soon on what do we mean by hands-on learning within engineering over there, and how do we translate that and do that efficiently and effectively.
Thanks. So I think probably two things that I've been thinking a fair bit about. One is just the change in the types and number of devices that students are carrying around with them, and how that's impacting our learning spaces, and the degree to which we are making decisions about our learning spaces based on what devices people are going to be bringing to the classroom with them. the statistic that you hear, or I hear from Cole all the time, is 99% of our students have laptops and about 20% bring them to class, right? And most of that's institutional. It's structure of the classrooms and the culture of the classrooms. But so I think that's one of the things. And then the other thing that I think I'm encouraged by is that Penn State is starting to really take this seriously and in particular starting to think about who should be the stakeholders and decision makers in the design of learning spaces, because up until now it's essentially been, I think, the University Committee on Instructional Facilities and proposals at the administrative level. And I think one of the things, and I can talk about another piece that Cole Camplice and I are doing as part of our course this semester, but is starting to think about who should be deciding how these spaces look and how they're designed, and that it should be students and faculty because they're the ones that are using them. So, and that conversation seems to be happening here.
I think from the perspective of the library for one, if you've ever been to the Paterno Petit, it's massive, it's huge, it's intimidating, as a keynote speaker said this morning with the New York Public Library. And so to make that space more inviting and also to kind of get students familiar with it, I love the idea of locking them up overnight as to get a real kind of a learning opportunity there.
I've done it.
Oh. So, and we're doing a lot of innovative things in the library, but a lot of times we get kind of labeled as not being very innovative, and so it's kind of breaking through some of those kind of barriers that students themselves have when they connect with going to the library or talking to a librarian. We've also have been kind of changing our focus, and so the collections are still very important, but our services are becoming even more important, and how we reach out to the students is not always transparent.
One of the challenges we have in the classroom side of things is that we have around 360 general purpose classrooms on campus, and the key words there are general purpose. We could have a math class at 8 a.m. and then an English class come in, and then a political science class, and then an electromechanical engineering class. And so one of the challenges that we have to encounter is we have to make these spaces configurable enough and sort of broad enough both facilities-wise and technology-wise that we can adapt to that. And that's something that we've really been taking seriously over the past couple of years. We've been doing away with as much as we can the bolted down seats, the fixed table with the armchairs, or with fixed table armchairs, and just trying to move to a space where you can customize it to your needs and where you can do what you need to do. We're trying to do that on the infrastructure side too. We've recently spent, over the past fiscal year, about $700,000 upgrading wireless specifically in classroom buildings. Historically, Telecom and Network Services has built out wireless internet for about 20% occupancy. So if it's a 100-person room, you assume that 20 people are in there, there are going to be 20 devices in there. Well, that's obviously no longer the case. So we worked with TNS in the past year, and we now established a 100% build-out margin. So if it's a 300-person class, we build out for 300 devices. And I think we're starting to reap the benefits of that. We still have places that we need to convert to that, but we've already seen a lot of people being able to take advantage of that, and it's one of the things that we need to move towards, to make general purpose so that it doesn't necessarily mean that nothing's done well because it has to do everything, but sort of making it configurable.
I thought we could maybe talk about some of the specific spaces that these guys manage, and maybe start with Scott with the Krause Innovation Studio, and got some images here.
Sure. I get control. Okay, and I'll try. We got 4 of us, so I'll try and be relatively brief. So the Krause Innovation Studio is in the College of Education. It's part of an initiative to support faculty teaching and learning with technology. We opened last week, so it's a brand new space. And there's a central collaborative space that has these tables in it that are also, Joe can talk about it, the Mediascape tables, which allow for multiple students to sit around and project to a central screen. So they're intended for that, to students get together and work in groups. We have classrooms or not classrooms, I'm sorry, meeting rooms towards the back that also have projection. You can't see it in this, but on the other wall to your right is a projection screen, so we can have smaller, more private meeting spaces. And then we have some that are just sort of loungy spaces for students to hang out and work in. And that table there that those two young women are working around actually has the surface is a pad of paper that you can write on and then tear it off and walk away with it. So there's some other little things that we're playing around with in the space that let us think about learning spaces a little bit and how we might put things in the environment to support learning. I don't know how many you have here. This is the classroom space that's associated with it, and this is my class with Cole Camplice. This is our class meeting, and there are one of 4 tables that look like that, projectors, and again the Mediascape table, so multiple people can project. And I can talk more about the design of that space, but that was largely based on a design that Steelcase developed called a Learn Lab. So that is our Learn Lab classroom. What else we got? So that's sort of the view of the whole main space. So with sort of most private towards the windows, getting sort of less private towards the front. I think we can roll it, and that's what it looks like from the outside. I don't know how many of you have been to the Chambers building, but the Krause Innovation Studio looks like it was dropped in from outer space compared to the rest of the building. So it's quite a change. So I think people are still trying to get used to it. But that's one other thing I'll mention about it, because it came up, is it is a BYOD space, so it's a bring your own device space. There's essentially no computers in the space. It's all display technology. So the idea is that students are coming with these things. Why do we want to put them in our space, have to life cycle, maintain them, provide technical support? So we've made a very conscious choice to not do that.
And you can find it too.
You can find it.
You can find it by going in the front door.
Yeah, it is a plus. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. There's one more image of the whole Learn Lab classroom, so you get a sense of what it looks like. And I'll turn over to Tim.
Mine looks old and dingy compared to that. Jeez. But I do remember in November you said that was going to open the next week, and it just opened. So anyway, all right. Anyway, looks good. I think that's also one of the challenges. You want to change any of these spaces, right? It takes a month is 6 months or a year.
Right. And just to be clear, the reason that our space didn't open is because of an HVAC unit that had to be taken by crane onto the roof of the building, and that got delayed. So that the space was completely done. It was like a museum for 3 months because we were waiting for this unit. So yeah, so things take time.
You got to plan that in, right?
Yeah.
So Learning Factory here. So this is over in engineering. We've been up, we started in '95 actually with the building and did an expansion, doubled the square footage about 5 years ago now. We have about 6,000 square feet over there. And it's a combination of classroom space, workspace, 3D printing, rapid prototyping, workbenches, and machine shop all combined under one roof. It doesn't actually show up on the campus map. It's the west half of the Engineering Services building, if you're interested in looking at that, way over on West Campus. Oh, sorry. Oh, go back. So this is then, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner is our classroom space. Things are on, we have the trapezoidal tables. Everything's on wheels now, so you can put it in lecture mode, you can put it in discussion mode, put it in brainstorming, group discussion mode there. We've actually added this semester huddle boards to that, and so we got they're the small whiteboards that, about 2x3 or 3x4 sort of space, very lightweight. You can basically give them to a team, they can carry them, use them, and do that. It's interesting though now, because I'm seeing these huddle boards popping up all around different places in the shop. They've written their notes there in the classroom, and then they take them and they prop them against the wall next to the machine so they could actually say what was that dimension or whatever else. 3D printing capability, the top left corner picture up there. This is actually going, the whole maker movement and rep wraps and open source printing. This is becoming big. These are some of the low end of the higher end machines, cost about $35,000. Now you can sort of build your own kits for $500 or even $1,000, the MakerBots that's out there. And so we've actually been working, there's a group now on campus that's established students that as part of a course and on their own are building and maintaining these things. And the idea is let's get them the low end 3D printing capabilities out there and in use within engineering. I was in anthropology the other day. They're printing scanned faces on this and stuff, and so it's finding all sorts of other uses, and it's fairly low cost and easy to maintain. So I think that's going to be a big shift in the next couple of years, because I can you know, for $35,000, I can get one of those, or I can get, you know, double or 60 plus of these rep wraps. Machining space, at the end of the day, we do like the hands-on aspect, training mills, lathes, some of the high-end CNC equipment. We spend about 2 hours doing training on that, and what we're finding is the number of students increases. We've got to spend a lot more time doing it, trying to look at now are there better ways to streamline that with video to try and help or augment it, welding capabilities, and then the project space on the right. Here is, at the end of this, that space, 6,000 square feet, that's not going. All has to support about, no, we locked it up now. Did I hit something here?
Keep going up.
Anyway, so to give you a size, the next picture there that I had hopped to beforehand is our design showcase. So we have over the course of fall and spring about 150 projects that'll be done in this space, about 650 students. That's half of the students that graduate in the College of Engineering will go through an experience like this. They're not all in the machine shop, but at the end of the day, you'll see something like that. These are from the slide. The December 8th was our fall showcase. The April 26th, so in about 5 weeks from now, if you're interested, we will be back in the Bryce Jordan Center taking up that whole space. So the challenge for me is how do you get all of these teams space to do hands-on stuff, plus lectures, plus discussion, plus meet with their sponsor, plus talk to their faculty, and everything else in between. And so part of what we've trying to do now, and one of the reasons I've been involved in these discussions is looking at the spaces are very distributed, and each college only has so much space. So how do we get better at working across arts and architecture, IST, engineering, anthropology, some folks in English that I met the other day, the innovation studio, and not only the digital fabrication equipment that's out there, but the learning spaces. I'm sending students left and right up to the Knowledge Commons now to go use those spaces. They're going to be coming your way if they can too. But just for general meeting space, whenever to sign up, the capabilities up there are great. They have their own laptops and computers, so show up, be able to meet and talk is great. So I think I'll end with that and hand over to Joe.
Left and right.
So let me give you a little bit of background. The library about 3 years ago, under the leadership of Sally Kalin, really kind of started working on the possibility of a Knowledge Commons on the first floor of the library. I've been incredibly fortunate to come to this very late, just to kind of run it. But people like Elisa Cahoy hit there, Loan Snavely, a number of people were very much involved over the last 3 years in the planning stages of this and looking at all the details to it. In fact, there were 20 different committees assigned to looking at various aspects of the Knowledge Commons. It was incredible. And then they just kind of gave me their final reports and said, go with it. And it's been a lot of fun.
I'll advance for you.
Okay. So if you haven't been to the library, I would really encourage you to do this. There's a couple of the philosophy behind this. One is we recognize that students today are not necessarily just going to have a research paper as their final product. Okay, so it could be a number of different things. This whole project, we worked very closely with different units. So Chris Millay, Ryan Wetzel were very much involved with this, with the Media Commons. We also worked with the ITS department. And so what I call the green team that used to be down at the Willard help desk has moved into the first floor of the library so that they can provide assistance with any type of handheld or maybe your personal devices that you have. And then we have the the blue team, which is our lab consultants who help out with any of the equipment that we have in the library. Throughout this space, we focused on a lot of the key words that you heard this morning from the keynote speaker, is that we're looking at collaboration. So every time we looked at a surface area, it's not just collaboration among the different units in providing the services, but it's also providing students with collaborative spaces. So all of the tables, workstations, we could have gotten a lot more computers in there if we had gone to just traditional rectangular tables and just lined them up in parallel rows. And we chose to go actually with fewer computers. There's 60 PCs on one half of the room, and there's 40 Macs on the other half of the Knowledge Commons. And we use tables that are kidney shape or bean shape, but it gives them a wide surface to work from. So I have students who plug in their laptop on one hand, put on the headphones, and then work off the desktop that they have with you. And that's not always for entertainment purposes. I talked to a student the other day who is actually a law student who's taking an online course from Harrisburg. So he's listening to the lecture that is being given on his iPad, and he's using the desktop to type his notes. So he has Word up, he's typing his notes, he's listening to the lecture, has the headphones on. And although I was seeing all these images, it wasn't for fun and game. He was very serious as to what he was doing. We also, throughout this area, have a lot of, we recognize that we're wanting to stimulate creativity. And so we have to create different environments for students to work in. Every time there's a window or natural light, we made that a public space. We put in a lot of greenery. We got plants throughout. We have a living wall. We have green walls. We have comfortable furniture. We have furniture that can be moved around, and you create the space that you want to create for that. So, or to sleep, whatever it takes for that space. This is an area that the thought behind it was to provide quick access, and these tables, first thing in the morning when I come in, are always in the upright position. They're hydraulic tables. They can, by just a touch of the finger, can adjust to whatever personal height you are. By the end of the day, actually by noon, they all get lowered to the seating position, and students bring chairs out we have chairs all over the place that just fold up, you wheel them around to wherever space that you want, and you can use that. But these our quick access stations end up going from, in January, like a 30-minute time. Now students are on there for an hour or more. So kind of a change in what we had in mind, but again, it's what the students are using the space and letting them work with it. Throughout the space, we have these various, this is a presentation practice room. This is a one-button studio that is part of Media Commons. It is awesome. This is what I call the wow factor in the library. This is where from the library standpoint, or from my perspective, is where we want to get. Because when you take people into the presentation practice rooms and you show them what is there, and the fact that we remove the fear of technology from the student to just allow them to give their presentation, everybody gets it. Everybody gets some application. I've had students on tours who say, this is what I could do this room with. I've had faculty say, this is how I can use the room. I've had administrators talk about how they can use the room. Everybody gets it. And that's my goal with the Knowledge Commons, is when you walk in, that you can get it, that you can get the services and resources that are available to you as a student that will make your education that much better. This is also part of our area is the steel case design. Chris Millay was very much involved in the layout of this, as well as Elisa Cohoy with this classroom. It's designed a little bit differently than what you would see in a normal classroom, with projectors going in all 5 directions. You can kind of set up the space whatever in any particular format that you want to use. I'm trying to keep up.
Just tell me when to stop.
Okay, and there are, as I said, there are 3 kind of physical service points in the Knowledge Commons. One is the library help desk. We are a 24-hour facility, so we open at 10 a.m. on Sunday. We don't close it again until midnight on Friday, and then we're on 10 to midnight on Saturday. Whenever we're open, there's somebody from the library that is available to assist at this station. The ITS desk has student lab consultants available to work with students up to usually from 8 a.m. to midnight every day of the week or till we close. They don't have the overnight, and Media Commons has somebody usually there until 10. So in addition to providing them the space, we are also providing them with a lot of the services. We also partner with Neil and the Learning Center in that we have writing tutors available late at night. We've explored at times math tutors. CAS is looking at the possibility of having speech tutors is something that we'll look at in the future. If you haven't been over there, the pictures don't do it justice. You really have to walk through the space, and I'm always there, and I'm always really happy to show the space off to people. As anybody here can test, it's just a really dynamic, lively area, and we're really excited about it.
Thanks. No, I don't think so.
I'll have to paint you word pictures. Any actual photos? So along the lines of right next to the Krause Innovation Studio, one of the facilities, our newest general purpose classroom facility is 202 Chambers, which we tried to design sort of in tandem with Scott's team to sort of reflect the diverse teaching needs that we have. It has 4 pods in the room. Each pod has 6 workstations, 6 PC workstations. This is the first lab we have where the workstations are available to all of the students, and then they also retract down into the desks, and that's for a couple of reasons. The first reason is because it's in Chambers, and Chambers is a College of Education sort of specialized building. They have a student laptop requirement. And so we wanted to have a space where we could have a computer lab or a classroom lab where we can have sort of specialized software that's expensive that the students can use that they normally wouldn't be able to afford on their laptops, but then also have a space where we can minimize all those distractions if the person just wants to lecture or they want to have group work without having the technology sort of standing between them and the instructor, or bring in their own laptops. Each workstation has a sort of pit of cables, and they can pull out and they can connect with VGA and audio. Around the room, there are 5 projectors. There's a main sort of presentation projector like this, and then there are 4 called Epson BrightLink interactive projectors, and that's sort of an interactive whiteboard, except the whiteboard is just a plain whiteboard. The projector does all the technology. Comes with a little pen, so you can write on it with a dry erase as if it's a regular whiteboard, or you can use the Epson pen, project what's coming from a computer, and then annotate on top of that, and draw things and save those drawings. And so there's a lot of flexibility there, and we have one of the workstations at each of the pods can project can interact with that board. One of the also unique features that we have in that room, which we're probably going to try to put in more rooms, is the instructor from the podium is normally limited to having sources that they're controlling at the podium going to the projectors. And we wanted to sort of flip that a little bit. So in this new room, you have your normal computer in the podium, your DVD VCR, and a laptop connection. But then using the switching system we have, there's a map of any of the workstations in the room, and the instructor can click on any of those workstations and put them up on any of the screens. And so the beauty of that is you can say, and students can be working on their own projects, and then you can put them up on the projector and you can show the students what everyone's doing. Or you might want to have a group work sessions where you have 4 sessions, 1 per pod. You can have a workstation from each pod going to their sort of designated projector. So you can have those people work as a cluster and have sort of some writing room and some experience there. So it really opens up the lecturing possibilities. We've begun. Historically, ITS has surveyed the students and the faculty sort of once per year just on general IT needs, but in the past year we've started surveying the faculty and the students directly on what their instructional facilities needs are. And things like 202 Chambers is sort of the first sort of fruits of that effort, where we're seeing the teaching requirements that they have, the sort of configuration requirements that we have, and then they have, and then we're trying to build those spaces to accommodate that.
So I think that gives you a good sense of some of the future sort of classrooms, and I think that we'd all agree that's sort of the atypical, that a lot of these classrooms are more along the lines of the images that I showed at the beginning of the presentation. So my question for you guys is, what are some of the practical challenges that you're facing in trying to adopt more of these sort of more future-thinking learning spaces, and what are some of the strategies that you've used to overcome those challenges and make these things happen? And I'm thinking in terms of budgets, technology, working with administration, faculty adoption, and things like that.
I want to hear from Dave first on that, if that's all right.
You know, ultimately it comes down to time and space for us. We have a lot of rooms and we have a lot of pressure to keep seating high in those rooms, because one of the challenges you ultimately run into is when you take those fixed table chairs and you remove them and you put in movable chairs, you can't fit as many of them in the room. And so we have scheduling requirements where it has to have 32 seats or it has to have 80 seats. When we move to the more configurable, sort of more comfortable seating, we often have to go down to 24 seats or 60 seats from 80 seats. That's one of the challenges we run into all the time. There are a lot of instructional challenges we have. Right now, like I said, we have 360 general purpose classrooms. They all have at least a projector and somewhere where the instructor can hook up their laptop. About 250 of them have a full technology podium. But this summer, we're converting 60 of those rooms that just have the projector and the laptop connection to full technology. And what that means is we suddenly have to run conduit in the floor, and we have to run speaker cable in the ceiling. We have to do all these sorts of things. We run into issues like 2 weeks ago, we were halfway along, and those of you who are familiar, there's an old Willard and there's an old side of Willard and a new side of Willard. The new side of Willard has all of the technology rooms. The old side doesn't right now. Well, over the summer, we're converting 20, 30 of the rooms in the old side to technology. So we had a vendor in there, and they were going into the walls to see what was in there. Building was certified asbestos-free in the late 70s. They punched through the wall, and there's asbestos. So now what that means is not only does our time frame double or triple now because we have to abate the asbestos that we were assured wasn't there. Anytime you run into asbestos, your cost basically doubles per project because you have to basically seal off the room, gut the drywall, and take everything out of the room. And that's not cheap. Not only that, but OPP only has, well, I don't want to say only, they do a great job. I think they have 3 asbestos abatement crews. We could probably use 10 of them. So we have to get outside vendors that increase the costs. We have to schedule them in. So ultimately, the main challenges that we run into, we have some budgetary concerns, but fortunately the Old Main has been good to us in terms of getting us what we need to get the job done. They see the importance of the modernization of the classrooms, but when it comes down to taking old space and turning it into usable space, it can really be a challenge both on the scheduling side and on the sort of environmental side.
Scott, you're on the university committee for instructional facilities. Is that what it's called? I wonder if you mentioned this briefly before, but how does that work? What's not working, and what are you trying to change?
Yeah. Wow. That's just, yeah. So put me on a spot and give me an easy question to answer. Well, here's what I'll say. Faculty representation on the University Committee on Instructional Facilities is a new thing, and I was one of those people. I am the person, which gives you. I mean, I think that says a lot, actually. So I think. Yeah, one of the biggest problems that we have to grapple with is that space change doesn't equate with culture change, and those two things have to go hand in hand for us to have effective change, which means we need faculty to think about the way they teach differently, we need students to think about what their education is about differently, and space is just a manifestation of that, but I think I mean, I'll mention this at the end, but or put this up at the end for folks. But one of the things that happened this semester in the class that I'm teaching with Cole is what we're calling the Occupy Learning movement, which is we've asked our students to go into spaces and do an analysis of the space, and they're posting that to the course blog, and I can put that up here. We actually happen to have 117 Osmond as one of the ones that was analyzed, and what they're doing is going in and looking, taking pictures, interviewing students, interviewing faculty, trying to understand what the space is currently used for, and then think about what it should be used for. But also, as a piece of that, we're trying to open that conversation up. And the reason that we chose that name is it's sort of becoming a cliche, but But the idea that who are the 99% that are using the spaces, the faculty and students, and to what degree are they making decisions about how those spaces are designed? So we're trying to informally create a mechanism to talk back to the university about how we think about these spaces. So, and of course, because Jane was here today, she's got all sorts of ideas about how to turn this into a game. So I look forward to hearing about how she's going to gamify this thing. But I think we have a culture issue that we have to grapple with.
Tim, you mentioned the distributed spaces and how you're working with different departments. Is that sort of a way for you to sort of have a grassroots process of redesigning?
Yeah, I think so, and more so. I mean, to Scott's point there, we're actually working with across architecture and engineering, challenging them with our lobby space, which is sort of this transition space between the classroom and the shop, and to sort of pose that problem to them and let them rethink how would you use that space, one, from a different discipline, you know, architecture, design space, and then two, from the student's perspective. And so these are freshman teams that are developing and designing this stuff. So what do they want to see and have and hold? And of course, I send them to the Knowledge Commons. They all come back and they just want to replicate that there. So we gotta look at the, you know, come your way and do these other things. But I agree. It's understanding better not just what is the technology, but as Dave said there, I like the changing questions of how are you using that technology in the classroom. And because there's so much push for it's active learning now instead of the standard passive lectures, and it's the collaborative learning too. And that actually gets challenging across disciplines now, and finding points that are central meeting spaces across campus is a good thing, and having those and the flexibility. The downside is you design a good space that is successful, and then everybody wants to come and use it, and then now you got to start scheduling, and now you got to do this. And so it'll be interesting as that evolves and as your spaces become better known, what do you do with that? So.
And then one of the things that we found already, without just doing a soft rollout, and we haven't done any massive publicity or marketing for it at all, we usually have anywhere between 180 to 200 students in our space during the day. We've had as many as 115 at 3:30 in the morning. So, and that's pretty much all the computers we have in our area, all the seating that we have available, except for what we have kind of hidden in a way that they can pull out and sit find additional chairs for us. So it's been a really popular space, and it's going to be a challenge next semester when we really start marketing and word of mouth. I mean, this is really coming from the students right now as far as coming to the Knowledge Commons. We hear it from the grocery stores, we hear it in their tweets, we hear it all over the place as to how much they talk about it. Unfortunately, some of them call it the no-co, but we just kind of go with whatever they go with, so see what happens.
I mean, I have more questions. Do you guys have any questions for the group? Drew?
Matt and I were talking back here amongst ourselves. We provide support in work in the design of bringing technology into the space. And then what we get from the administrators is sticker shock. And sometimes they don't want to talk to us until the project's almost done and say, okay, what kind of AV you want? We're doing a major renovation of our student union. The architect put in a space holder for AV technology, and basically what she did is put just enough money to buy the projectors, not hook them up on anything, just hang them from the ceiling. So is there any way that you folks with your knowledge of what these spaces could do in their cost, try to get that word to the campuses that if you want to do these kinds of things, they are expensive, and they need to be thought of at the day that they hire the architect, not 3 weeks before they break ground, or 2 weeks before the semester starts.
If I could just follow that up, we are renovating the main classroom building at the campus, a brand new one. And I have forwarded pictures of Knowledge Commons. I have forwarded pictures of this space, that space. I've been stopped. I have not been invited to meetings anymore because my suggestion is not what they wanted to do. They wanted to take all the tabular armchairs out, do the renovation, and bring all the tabular armchairs back in, so that we have our 35, our 40-seat classroom back again after the renovation. I can't get them to think that this is an opportunity to change the space, the culture, and move forward, because it costs too much money.
Well, do you have quick thought there is, you know, sort of data to support how the technology helps or improves the learning? I mean, I think you go in and say, yeah, it's going to cost a lot more to any administrator or whoever, then they're going to say, well, I want the cheaper stuff, or I want this, or I want that. I mean, I had to fight to get, I wanted the rolly chairs that fold up, that stack, that cost 2 to 3 times as much as what the other ones did. But they give a lot of flexibility, they get used a lot more, they're better chairs. And it's sort of the philosophy is I'd rather not skimp on some of the stuff, get something that's good, that's going to last, that's durable. And same thing for the technology there, is show that it maybe help make a better case of, hey, we have this technology in here, and before and after, and we, you know, the faculty love to see their data on, and others on convincing, hey, it costs more, but it, you know, knowledge gains or learning outcomes and all those sort of measures. So I guess what sort of metrics there, and then the other is how do you get more people at the table to support it? So Scott's not the lone voice for us from the faculty side on the university instructional committee on instruction planning or whatever.
So just a note about assessment, and then we'll get to another question. I know Scott with his class, Scott and Cole's class, they're doing assessments of various learning spaces. Joe and I are working on some protocols for assessing the knowledge commons and other learning spaces. So if that's something you're interested in doing and developing some of that evidence of the effectiveness of your spaces, that's something we can maybe talk about.
I just found that this really does sound like Penn culture's very slowly moving into the integrated design process that we've been working on through different sort of catalogs in the past. Basically, you know, stuff that we've been doing on much big projects, but much smaller, kind of centralized scale things. But I mean, the first thing that we tell everybody in an integrated design process, if you don't have everybody at the table, you're going to engineer your good stuff out. Yeah.
I've taught in 117 Osmond, and I've taught in 108 Forum, and 119 Osmond, the worst of the worst buildings, just so you know. And the reason that those buildings or those rooms are used is that they're wonderful purposes. They're lecture demonstration rooms. I can do large-scale chemistry demonstrations, a large number of students. And those are the only rooms on campus you can do them in. And when you ask students that they list those demonstrations as one of the best aspects of a chemistry lecture, we're really able to, honestly, I can do some pretty cool demonstrations so they can actually see chemistry in action in a live lecture. So while I absolutely, the vertigo thing in 117, oh my gosh, it's horrible. The projection technology in those rooms is ridiculously horrible. The visual, you know, it's terrible. Because there are a lot of bad things about it. But in designing it, I want to be part of that process because I don't want to lose my demonstrations because I'm telling you, like, the list over. The demonstrations was one of the best features. And like, 100 Thomas, in theory, has demonstration capability. But there's no way in God's green earth that anybody's going to see those demonstrations way in the back. They're just, you know, it's really nice to have all that room between seats, but if you're going to put 800 people in there, I don't know how the heck they see what's going on in the front. So, you know, those are issues that, you know, if we're going to keep teaching large classes, which I have 2,700 students, I don't know how I'm going to get it much smaller.
I just wanted to respond to that and talk about how a process where you can, you know, I think when we were planning the Knowledge Commons classroom, we had a good process where we did involve faculty who teach in library classrooms. So in our case, the Knowledge Commons classroom is optimized for the needs of library instruction. And that's why there's 5 screens around the room, is because, like you're saying, you know, interface or demonstration is primary, that's the focus, and we want them to be close so they can see the screen or they can see whatever is happening. And so, you know, to have that happen more often, to have the faculty voices, the people who actually use and teach in those spaces, that would be ideal. And now we've taught in that classroom, and it works wonderfully.
Yeah, what I was going to say to that is, you know, the last thing we want to do is put an English class in 117 Osmond because it's not designed for that space. But the problem that we have is less than 3% of the usable square footage on campus is classroom space. And that's a number that when you say to that people, they honestly don't believe you the first time they hear it. But less than 3% of usable floor space in all buildings across University Park is general purpose classroom, even though that's the main function of the university. And so as a result, we have large classes, we have many classes throughout the day, And we have to put them in places where they probably shouldn't be. Places like 117 Osmond or like 230 Theater. That was designed as a room for art history to show slides to art history students. And now we have people, you know, learning Korean in there. And, you know, it's things where the space isn't designed for that. But until we can work with other departments and work with the university itself to acquire space so that we can have both specialized situations where we need to and general spaces where we can accommodate things, it's going to be a continual problem.
We're almost out of time, but Chris, yeah.
Because I think this issue of culture is really important. I'm on the instructional space task force. We have been having town hall meetings across the university, on campuses and everywhere else. There's a blog which I just tweeted out about it. It has faculty, administrators, but the idea of the instructional space task force is dealing with scheduling priorities, philosophy of scheduling, and other kinds of things related to some of the issues, because these are there's a lot of different issues going on. There's, you know, about scheduling, how we schedule classrooms, what kinds of classrooms we have, who's involved in the decision making, and people should check out the blog, because the intent of the task force was to be more inclusive about this kind of conversation and have students input in it, scheduler staff. I mean, where's the staff voice in some of these kinds of things, you know, and as well as faculty. So
Yeah,
it's called the Instructional Space Task Force. Instructional Space at Penn State, and it's wp.tlt.psu.edu space at PSU. And I just tweeted it to the.
Yeah, I'm in response to that, Chris, and I know you know that our class participated in one of those town halls, so we're taking that seriously. But I think the problem is that this is a space-by-space problem. It's not a space problem. So, you know, if we're talking about this has to be a lecture demonstration classroom, I think that's an important piece of it. But does it need to look like a 19th century operating theater to have that capacity for the space? And the answer is absolutely not. So we can figure out a way to design that space so that it can work for the faculty that are working in those spaces and the students that are learning in those spaces without making, you know, but it requires all the stakeholders. It goes back to the gentleman who was talking about design. If we don't have the stakeholders in the room talking about the room, then we're going to lose some voice and the space is not going to work in some ways. So I think we have to be serious about that.
I think on that note, we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much to my panelists, all you guys for questions.